It's all working. It's been a hot minute since I've been in here, and I'm adjusting volumes, getting used to being back in there in the studio. How are you guys today? Mark Wagner here, DentalBytes, Dentist on Demand. The last time I was in studio was in August. It's been crazy. I hope everybody out there is doing well. Economy seems to be doing all right. The dental industry seems to be okay, depending on your perspective. I'm excited. I was with my last guest last week at the Clearly Aligned Mixed Dentition session with Dr. Schalk here in Vancouver. It was nice to rub some shoulders with people in my own city. I've been all over the place. Without further ado, let's bring Mr. Chris Seetoo on the show. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, Mark. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show, and I like your setup there. It looks pretty darn good.
Yeah,
your multi cameras and your background looks pretty amazing.
You people usually quickly discover that I'm quite the nerd. So this is it's been a while since I've been in here. I love this room. This is I call it my little creative nest. I've had a lot of great conversations in here, and yeah, thanks for spending some time with me. You've been a crazy busy man on this Canadian Clearly Aligned tour, doing events across Canada, and I understand that Vancouver was a sellout. So congratulations.
Yeah, it was an excellent course. We had a lot of highly engaged dentists there, so really happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, and Dr. Schalk, he is built for that. Like it's his calling. He's great in front of a room. The content was great. Like you guys put on a really good show. The food is even good. Like right, that's super important when it comes to these things. Like what are some key things? Like I've worked with other folks in trying to set up like successful courses, getting people signed up. I know there's a combination of, brand awareness, getting the content out there. I've seen the ads, like your guys' meta ads, or you guys are on point. But what is it in your mind? What is a successful show? Like what brings people to come and sign up for a $3,000 to $5,000 weekend course?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think first and foremost, it's the content that we're providing, right? I think there's a gap in the industry when it comes to ortho education, especially, excuse me, around early treatment with orthodontics for dentists. There's not a lot of education out there, and there are a lot of dentists that are treating kids with palatal expanders and things like that. So having the ortho side of it, I think is key. Having quality education. I think also having someone like Dr. Schalk, who's so passionate about what he does, who's highly trained, who's able to deliver the content in an engaging way over 2.5 days. It's not a short course, so to maintain that engagement with the attendees and the doctors who are there is key. But I think getting doctors to the programs comes with a lot of the reputation that we built as a company, and as Dr. Schalk has built as an educator and a speaker in orthodontics, specifically to clear aligners and Invisalign. And then also just the partnerships with companies that help us get the word out to the doctors who are interested in expanding their scope of practice when it comes to clear aligners. So that, that's specific to that particular course. Obviously, we run a number of different types of courses around clear aligners, but the one we just had this weekend, being mixed dentition, I would say those are the keys. When it comes to the venue, like you said, the food was amazing. I have to give kudos to our team, specifically Angela Lowther, who handled all the setup to the program. She did a phenomenal job, and I would say the Fairmont waterfront in Vancouver was top notch. The service that we had was excellent. They're very, very accommodating. Probably one of the smoothest programs that we've had. I think that you've been in the dental industry for a long time. You've probably run a few programs yourself over the years. And yeah, there can be glitches that happen in the background, which maybe the attendees aren't aware of. But it is a process getting these programs set up for sure.
Like you can't be perfect, right? Heaven forbid, right? You have that whatever happens in the morning. There's some AV issue, or the sound doesn't work, but it seemed to go well, and it's great to walk out at the end of the course and have a couple little cocktails, and then on the rooftop there with the sunset. Man, it was great.
Yeah, it was great that the weather cleared up a little bit. I think it was raining all day, and just in time for our cocktail reception at the end of day
Yeah.
one, it cleared up and we could step outside.
Yeah, I from Langley, I swam into Vancouver. It was nasty, nasty. We're back to our regular Vancouver conditions out there. So, how are things going? Like Clearly Aligned, things seem to be just really taking off, heading in the right direction. How are things going?
Things are going amazing. Yeah, we've had a lot of growth. We obviously have Clearly Aligned as our education platform, but we also have our growth network of doctors called Clearly Select. That's a big part of our focus, and that's highly based on the education that we provide. So when we have engaged dentists that want to grow their practices specifically with orthodontics and clear aligners in Invisalign, then they're a right fit for our program. So right now we have about 370 practices across North America, and it's a phenomenal group of doctors. And all together, the courses, the education, the group, everything is growing really, really well. We have a ton of doctors who are seeing a lot of value in our group and growing their practices, and offering the support and education that we do. I think really lends to that practice growth.
You keyed in on that too, and it's all about that Monday morning after the course.
Yeah.
It seems like there's like a really great community that you guys are building first and foremost, but you have members that are sort of that, those local champions, like the mentor positions. Like I think that's key, isn't it? Because how much of the course do you retain in those 2 days? There has to be sort of that extra support.
Yeah, 100%. And that was something we just tried in this last course. It's something we implemented that was new. We've run a number of courses over the last few years live. And this one in Vancouver, because of our Clearly Select group and because of the number of doctors that we have that are highly educated and skilled in orthodontics and have the expertise within their practices, we added a mentor component to the live course where attendees would have a specific mentor at the course, which they could connect with, ask questions to. Dr. Schalk, at all the breaks and the lunches, he's got people up there asking him questions. So a lot of the doctors don't get that opportunity to clarify or ask questions or even show cases to Dr. Schalk. So the mentors, we had 4 different mentors there during the course, and that allowed all the attendees to get support in one way, shape, or form outside of our team. And the feedback was phenomenal. So, we had pre-course interactions as well as during the course, and we'll also have post-course interactions as well. Obviously, for doctors who are part of our Clearly Select group, that ongoing mentorship and follow-up and support is there. But to your point, there's a lot of times doctors will go to any type of CE course, get excited. If they have their teams there, they're excited. But it's all about the execution on Monday and moving past that and the implementation, right?
Yeah.
Everything comes back on Monday and hits you.
Shout out to Dr. Preet Batty he could probably get up in front of the room and teach the course too. Like his engagement was unreal. His level is he's got a huge knowledge base too. So shout out to Dr. Preet Batty. He's a great guy. So we got that. So the execution we talked about. Are you finding, with the material that like the mixed dentition portion is it like it's a bit of like a different concept for folks, and you know, and I'll speak to, the AVO, right? Like it's something different, right? How do you find like the uptake on that? Like people are so afraid of, things outside of the normal, their perception of normal. How do you get folks minds wrapped around that, especially in this time and age? Like there's so many different things coming down the pipeline, there's so many different pieces of technology. It's changing the workflow, and maybe changing, you get the, well, that's not how I learned it, so how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, well, I guess if you're referring specifically to mixed dentition and dentists, obviously in any, if you're going to an implant course or any other course, orthodontics course, you're not going to learn everything you need to know in a weekend's course. So I think that's why having a group or a program where there's follow up that allows doctors to continuously have support and continuously learn. The mixed dentition one's an interesting one. One of the things that I learned, and maybe the viewers don't know this, but I previously worked at Align, and I worked very much on the orthodontist side. And if GP Invisalign reps would have asked me to give them information on Invisalign first, which is Invisalign's product for phase one treatment, I would have been very, very hesitant because at the time, this was prior to Clearly Aligned, the inception of Clearly Aligned. There really wasn't a lot of education out there for mixed dentition for general dentists. So I would be very hesitant in terms of, providing the information, only because yes, there are challenges. There are things just like anything else in dentistry. To treat comprehensively, you have to have the education, but you
Yep.
also have to have the support there. So for us, I think having the support for the doctors that take the course, if they decide that Clearly Select, our group, is a fit for them, and we decide that the doctors are a fit for us, then there is that ongoing support for the doctors to help them in terms of getting started. There's a lot of doctors that are already doing early treatment with kids. Whether it's airway treatment, expansion of the palate and things like that. So there is a natural progression, especially when the kids are in the practice and the parents trust them. But at the same time, we want doctors who take this course to also understand that there's limitations in terms of what their skill levels are, and to know when it's appropriate to refer and when it would be appropriate to take on a certain type of case within their practice. We want to keep people in their scope of practice so that they're not taking on the wrong cases, and that's why orthodontists go for 3 to 4 years more education in that scenario. But I think now that there's more and more education for general dentists around that, there's more opportunity for them to look at expanding their scope of practice.
Yeah. Every veteran doc I've talked to, the ones that have kept up with the CE and the educational part of the business, like they're the ones that are enjoying their career as well. I think scope of practice. Yeah, let's get into sort of what that means for production wise for the practice, but I think it just keeps people interested in what they're doing too. Would you agree?
Oh, I definitely agree with that, and of course, treating specific to that course that we had this weekend, treating with mixed dentition is definitely not for everybody. It's a specific type of doctor who wants to dive into that, but also more importantly wants to make sure that they have the education to be able to treat in that area. I would say there's a lot of dentists have no desire to treat younger kids, and that's totally fine. Right, they have good relationships with their orthodontist to be able to refer those off. But the ones that do, that are really diving into that component of their practice, and as we know, more and more general dentists are doing orthodontics in their practice, and more patients are asking about it in their practice because they're comfortable with their general dentist. So as long as they have the education, like I said, and stay within their scope of practice, and refer out what doesn't make sense for them, I think it makes sense for everybody. And especially from a production standpoint, if you can grow that scope of practice and have the confidence to do the treatments.
Yeah, I mean, the more you know, the more you can be an advocate for your patient too. You might be referring them out, but just having that knowledge base to send them on the right path, so they're getting the best treatment, I think that's mission critical, and for a GP, in my opinion. Would you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. So production wise, so now they've learned the course. They're pumped. They like, how do they find these patients now? Like, are they having the conversations? Like, what's their next steps? And this kind of leads into sort of your piece, what you presented. I saw it in Calgary. Was the you're not selling, you're educating. Like, I'd love for you to jump into that, because I found that I found that piece to be really it was awesome. Like, it was like your perspective on it was like spot on.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, so I did do that presentation in Calgary, and I think just in terms of, I think case acceptance, right? When we're looking at a dental practice and how we approach getting patients interested in any form of treatment, the idea of sales in dental is such a dirty word. It's a
Yeah.
swear word, right? And when you talk to team members, it's fair. You know, they are dental professionals. Their training is in, whether it's dental assistant, it's a hygienist, it's a doctor. They aren't salespeople, and that's totally fine. But I think the concept of what a salesperson is from, even let's call it the 80s and earlier, or even the 90s, is a very different definition than what actually happens in sales, right? Realistically, sales is identifying needs and finding solutions. Is need to understand that they're not selling. They're educating patients on something that they need and providing a solution that's going to prevent consequences in the future. And as long as they can educate them on what those consequences are and what the solution might be, because it could be multiple solutions. If you're looking at orthodontics, right? What is the one thing that, and you would see this now as you work with Avo and you talk more orthodontics with orthodontists and general dentists, is that, especially in the general dentist, not so much in the orthodontic practices because they're talking just ortho, but in the general practice, often you'll have team members say to patients, you'd be a great candidate for something like Invisalign or clear aligners. Have you ever thought about it? Well, that's, to me, not the right approach,
Yeah.
right? You're selling, that's a product, Invisalign or whatever
Yeah.
clear aligner you're using in the practice. That's a product, that's a tool.
Yeah.
Really, what it should be is, here's the problem. This is the consequence that's coming along with the problem. And the solution that we use in our practice is, whether it's Invisalign or braces or another clear aligner brand, then that's the solution. And that comes last. But
Yeah.
they really have to understand what the problems are and what are the consequences with that problem,
Yeah.
so that the solution makes sense. Right. I
Okay.
think I said this before on one of our podcasts is, you could have the highest tech banana peeler around, Bluetooth, does all these things, plays music,
Yeah.
peels your banana, but I
Yeah.
have no need. I have no need for a banana peeler. I can do that with my hands. So no
Yeah.
matter how cool it looks and how amazing it is, I'll never buy it because there's no need. And I think conveying that need to the patients is first and foremost. And one of the things that I presented is just utilizing the technology that you have at your fingertips. And especially nowadays, I think the majority of offices have a 3D scanner, whether it's iTero or another brand. You have the ability to show these patients with a 3D model what's going on in their mouth, explain the consequences of a malocclusion, and be able to then introduce a solution that makes sense to correct that problem. Maybe that's going to be a crown, maybe that's going to be a night guard, maybe that's going to be Invisalign. But it's the problem first, the consequences, and then really what the solution is. And the solution is going to be what you guys use in your practice. And it's not presenting, you're a great candidate for a product,
Yeah.
essentially.
I think the sales word is kind of dirty across everything these days. Like, you know what I mean? Like, um, yeah, you nailed it. Like I was part of a few dental like full practice builds, and there were some doctors that were putting 50-inch screens in the operatory, just so
Right.
they can bring that patient along the journey, and really just that's I think that's the name of the game. It's identifying, like you nailed it. It's identifying what the problem is, what that will mean long term, and then on the other side, it's the treatments. It's here are your options, and having those options too. Or I think that's significant as well. Like there's not just one street. There's a magnitude of options based on what works for that individual patient as well, and coming to that solution together, right? It's not just kind of blasted at them. You're
Yeah.
together on it, and I've seen that work. And what I've seen that works too is like the entire team, the hygienist, the front end, like everybody's on board, like they understand. I think a lot of docs will get into sort of this education thing, but it doesn't really translate well to the rest of the team. And the docs that try to put everything on their own shoulders and drive the boat is you need your team to be behind it as well, and those systems in place so that it flows nice. Like I've seen these clunky practices where it's the doctor's pulling out his hair, he's wondering why there's nobody in his practice, and it's more of like just nothing's working. But yeah, that's where the support thing comes into play. So in terms of the ongoing education piece, I know that is it the select members that then have like an online portal thing, or if you go to a course, do you have access for a certain amount of time? How does that work?
Yeah, so all of our online courses that we have available, so we have right now Clearly Aligned, and these courses are open to anyone globally. We have general dentists predominantly that take them, but we do have orthodontists that have taken them, especially in other parts of the world. So we have attachments and biomechanics, and this is related to clear aligners and Invisalign. Really, the how and why behind the treatment planning. Foundational systems is a course that gives you all the systems that you need to run a successful clear aligner practice, as well as diagnosis and treatment planning. And we have the two mixed dentition courses. So three of those five we will run live: the attachments, biomechanics, the foundational systems, and the mixed dentition courses. And anytime a doctor comes to our live course, they get access to our online version for 12 months post course.
Do all the courses, do they play together? Like, is there like you get this one and it attaches to this other one? Like, how does that flow? Are they better off to have them all because the whole mind works together?
I would say they are all individual courses, right? It really depends on where the doctor is in their particular journey and what are the barriers and the challenges and the educational needs that they have. There's really no right or wrong place to start because depending on what their background is, one course might be more suitable than the other. But I would say if it's a new doctor just starting out with treating with clear liners in their practice, foundational systems would be normally where we would recommend to start. Right, the systems are such a key component of running a successful clear aligner component of your practice, and that's all included in there, from workflow and systems and forms and documents, as well as the consult process, utilizing your itero to educate your patients. Also financial presentation, how do you present financial, because that's a big one,
Huge.
right? I talk a lot about that at the course as well, and how the dental industry and medical industry as a whole has the model flipped upside down.
Yeah.
Any other industry, you never start with the big numbers. You always start with the small numbers. And dental specifically, and medical for that matter, always start with the big number. Hit you in the face with, the $6, $7, $8, $9,000 treatment, and then try to work backwards. So
Yeah.
the foundational systems course really has all of those components. it's based on all the systems that Dr. Schalk was able to put into place to grow his practice from 0 Invisalign starts to 300 starts a year within 2 years. And now, he's focused on, his practice, but also focused on Clearly Aligned and Clearly Select and bringing education and lecturing across North America. And the systems which he's created have really allowed him to practice 1 week a month in his practice,
It just blows
and
me
then
away.
three
Yeah.
weeks a month focusing on all these other endeavors that he has, but yet still starting 300 plus patients per year at 1 week a month. So he's very dialed in, and that course specifically really covers those systems. And then the attachments and biomechanics course is probably our most popular when it comes to general dentists. I think that what happens is, they'll take the Invisalign course, and Invisalign has really expanded their educational offerings to the general dentists now. But a lot of them will often think that the software is doing everything and not take control of their treatment plans themselves, which, they should be. They're the doctors. And so the attachments and biomechanics course really gives them strong insight as to, how do we set these cases up and how do we take control of our own treatment plans to achieve the results that they want, what attachments to use, when do I switch to this attachments, how do I achieve the movements that I want to achieve. And then obviously the diagnosis and treatment planning that will come more into play when you're treating growing patients and things like that, and as well as the mixed dentition. So those courses, those are the four. But I would say generally most doctors start with foundational systems or the attachments and biomechanics.
Chris, you're super passionate about this. You talked about starting backwards. We didn't really dive into you. We just
Yeah.
we dove right into this stuff. I
Yeah.
could I can tell it just kind of saturates your brain. It's great. It really shows. You were a teacher. You started off as a teacher and then moved into the medical space. I want to hear a little bit about your journey into this
Sure.
crazy. The first question that I usually ask is, how did you get into this mess? Like, and once
Yeah.
you get into dental, that's it, right? You're stuck.
Well, I love it. I love dental. I love
Yeah.
specifically orthodontics. But yeah, how did I get into this? Like you said, I was a school teacher, so I graduated from the University of Alberta quite a few years ago. I think if I was still teaching, this year would be oh my goodness, I think it would be my 29th year.
Wow. So you started you started teaching when you were one, right?
Yeah, something like that. So I taught junior high in Edmonton for 5 years. Realized that probably wasn't the career that I was going to stick with for the rest of my life. Knew a couple friends who were in pharmaceutical sales and explored that. Went on a couple ride-alongs with some buddies who were sales reps, and at that particular time, I was being governed by bells and having to be in this class at this time, and dealing with hormonal junior high kids. And then I went out with one of my friends as a rep, and kind of the flexibility and the conversations were so different. I was like, where do I sign up if I can get a job in this industry I'm in? So I actually moved in pharma. I worked for multiple companies for 18 years, moved through a number of different positions in sales and marketing. And then fortuitously ended up meeting a friend of mine who worked for Invisalign, Jason Jobs. And he had been promoted to a regional manager position and was backfilling his Invisalign territory manager position, which I said, no, I'm not interested in going back to carry the bag and go back into the field because I was managing in pharmaceuticals. But then decided to dive in and ended up loving it. I worked through a number of positions at Invisalign over the years, and then
I want to pause. Like, I want to go. I want to stick here for a sec. There's some glaringly obvious answers to this question, but in your opinion, being that you spent some time in the company, how is Align so successful? Like, obviously they got the dollars to spend on everything, but what are some key things there, and why they're ruling the planet?
well, yeah, I think there's a number of things to consider. One is it took them a long time to get to where they're at, and they stuck with their plan and their strategy, which morphed and changed over the years. But what I would say is when I started with Invisalign, and at the time, coming from pharmaceuticals, I managed, I was a sales trainer in pharma for quite a few years. And the quality of people that I worked with at Invisalign was superior to any company that I'd ever worked with. Just highly engaged, super intelligent people, really loved what they did, loved their customers. And working in dental versus medical or pharmaceuticals at the time was very, very different. It was true partnership when you would partner and collaborate with one of your customers. That was very different than pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals, there's a ton of medications, there's a ton of reps, and you're going in, throwing your three marketing messages at a doctor, and it was not often. There wasn't a lot of job satisfaction on that
Yeah,
side
yeah,
of things. And
yeah.
then moving into dental, I think that consultative approach to selling was probably the biggest difference. And so from the Align side, the people that I worked with at the time, I think even though I'd been in sales for 18 years, I was sales trainer. I learned so much about sales even in my first year working with Align.
Mhm.
So I think their training was great in certain areas. I think that the people were phenomenal, and the amount of work that they did building brand awareness. Uh, it, Invisalign's the Kleenex of dental, really, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
There's no other product.
Everybody knows it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no other
Patient
product.
wise, right? Yeah.
Yeah, patient wise, right? The consumers know what the
Yeah.
product is. So the amount of work that they did to create that brand, to create a consumer awareness that would drive business into an orthodontist or a general dentist practice, patients actually asking for a specific product, right? You don't see that with any other dental product out there, really. So I think that was a big part of it. And then just the support that they provided their customers. I will say, there were customers that weren't as happy with Align at the beginning when I started. And like I said, it was a long road for them to get to where they are now. Now they're hyper successful, and things change and morph. When you go from that startup mentality, which even as a $1 billion company, they often still had. And I think things. I haven't been with Align for 4 years now, and I think things have probably continued to change and morph and adapt to
As
what
they
the
do.
business needs were. But still a hyper successful company. I ended up leaving to take on the opportunity with Smile Sonica, where you're at right now with the AVO system.
Yeah.
And I
I would
did
love to
that
get
for 3 years.
your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so after that, the 3 years with Smile Sonica, that's where I ended up at Clearly Aligned here.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, as far as Smile Sonica and the AVO system go, if you want to dive into that, I'm
Let's do
happy,
it. Let's do
happy,
it.
happy,
Would be
happy to chat.
we would be remiss if we didn't, right?
I it's still near and dear to my heart. It was I made another move to move away from the company, but I still am highly invested in terms of the success of Smile Sonica and the Avo system. I think it's an amazing technology that doctors need to know about,
Yeah.
both in ortho and other applications. Eventually there'll be perio and implants.
Yep.
Um, and the interesting part for me is coming from pharmaceuticals, where there's clinical trials that are highly, highly regulated with hundreds of thousands of patients, and moving into dental, where there were clinical studies and there are clinical studies, but it's at a very different level. Um, but I would say in terms of the AVO system and how it compares to other devices that are considered to be in that category, and I say that with quotation marks, only because
Yes.
the devices in that category that still exist, they're nothing alike.
Yeah.
But the scientific data behind the technology of low intensity pulse ultrasound is the most robust that's out there when it comes to looking at tooth movement with respect to orthodontics and the robustness of the accelerated tooth movement data, but also the reduction in resorption. So for me, coming over from Invisalign, where I was very, very happy, it was just an opportunity. I happened to be living in Edmonton. I happened to know some of the shareholders that introduced me to the board of directors, and then it kind of went from there. Spent about 3 years launching out that particular device that you have on your desk there.
Yeah.
Um, and it went very well, but it's a difficult market because there was a lot of stigma in the market with previous devices that didn't
Right.
hold up to what they claimed to do. And so I think that the doctors now that utilize it appropriately and see the results, they really see the value, not only from a production and efficiency side, but also from a patient experience side.
Yeah.
Right. When you look at orthodontic treatment, the average treatment is 18 to 24 months. If you can reduce that treatment time for a patient, it's kind of a no-brainer, in
Yeah.
my opinion. And then, as a parent who had a child go through fixed orthodontics, if you can reduce the number of times I have to drive my kid from school, leave work, go to the orthodontic office, sit there for 5 minutes while they do an adjustment, and then take them back to school. If you can cut that number of appointments down for me, that's worth a lot.
Yeah.
So I think there's a ton of value just from the science behind the Avo device, but also just the ability to have benefits for the practice, but also a significant amount of benefit for the patients, which I think gets lost in the mix sometimes. Right.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. It does get lost in the mix. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think often the sense of a practice is that patients aren't looking for faster treatment. And they're maybe not looking for faster treatment, but they're certainly looking for efficiency.
Yeah,
Right.
and
And
I think that's what this
they-
this kind of provides sort of that the cases seem to like we're finding that they're tracking better. Mid-course correction and end of treatment refinements are being reduced as well. There's all sorts of I think in my opinion with the Avo device it's kind of the long game, right? You had these initial players in the market, I won't name any names, we don't have to, but it really gave this a negative stigma and this taste that wasn't so pleasant. And it's going to take a little bit of time for the Avo to just kind of quietly do what it's been designed to do. And then it's just going to hit this inflection point and really take off. And it's pretty exciting to be a part of it, to be honest. But yeah, it's the long game and the awareness as well, right? Walking through doors, it's telling the story, and it's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. Well, when I was VP of sales there, it was an interesting ride, and definitely my first experience with the startup. Learned an amazing amount from the team there, and also the experience, but also learned a ton about the sales component of it when you're dealing with an unknown entity that your customers are not familiar with, and you have to build that brand awareness and proof of concept for before you can even have trials of the device.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it's come a long way. It's come a long way, I believe, and I think there's a lot of experience out there. But from my perspective, and I'll throw a plug for Avo here if there's any dentists listening, is that if you are doing orthodontics in your practice, this is a device that you should consider. And at the very least, I think it almost comes back to what we were talking about in terms of financial presentation and how it's being presented
Yeah.
to patients, whether it's included in treatment or it's given as an option,
Right.
because it is a high tech device that has a lot of research and development that's gone into it. It's ultrasound. So it's not going to be in an inexpensive, thing that just vibrates. It's actually delivering,
Yeah.
ultrasound directly to the cells and stimulating the osteoblasts and osteoclasts to work faster.
Yeah.
And when it's explained to the patients in a way that is giving them the option of whether they want to consider, having a shorter treatment, and potentially safer treatment in certain situations, then patients are going to probably say yes, especially if it's presented in a way financially that's made affordable for them, or
Yeah.
it's included in their treatment.
It's interesting what people put value on, and I think the more education they have to sort of present that value is it's not a sale. It's yeah, if you're telling somebody that with compliance, of course, right,
Yeah.
that they can half the treatment duration. It's a big deal. And I think just for the device itself, it's we've hit 2,500 patients through treatment, so it's just accumulating that information, and then putting that out into the industry, saying like this is device is here to stay, and you should check it out. So it's
Yeah.
I love like the startup. Like, that's fun. I think that's where the utilizing the max amount of creative power to try and navigate, and that's not going to work, and you're constantly readjusting to hit that perfect little spot that if that's in terms of like how you educate, or how it's presented, or what information people find important, or what people double click on, right? So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
fun.
Well, the beauty of a startup is the agility of it.
Yeah. Oh
Uh,
yeah, for sure.
if you're working for a large corporation, which I did for the majority of my career until I joined Smile Sonica, and now with Clearly Aligned is also a startup,
Yeah.
you have the ability to make those changes and pivot quickly. Whereas with a large corporation, there's often many layers of things that need to happen before any changes can actually occur.
Yeah.
So that is very nice about the startup world,
Yeah.
but it also has its challenges as well.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, like sounds like we're kind of similar in that fact where you came from a spot where your day was dictated by bells, right? And now just having the ability to just have purpose in your work is I feel your passion and clearly align, and it's great. I think that's we all kind of have to navigate to that spot where we can deliver the maximum amount of value to whatever idea that we're supporting.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm super passionate. I love what I do right now. I think that it's kind of a nice combination between what I've done in the past, between sales, but also education. The group of dentists that we work with, they're just amazing. It's such a high level, such a collaborative group of dentists, and the network is just second to none in my opinion. The engagement, the support that they give one another, even just from whether it's orthodontics, whether it's practice management, anything within our their scope, it's just nice to see, and it's nice to work with doctors at that level. And the education side of things, it's a bit different, right? I've moved kind of out of the sales world, which I've spent so many years in, to now being part of this education company that's providing so much value from a educational standpoint. Yeah, there's still a sales component. I have to get doctors to buy
Yeah,
courses, and
it's a
our
business.
team,
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
a
Yeah.
business.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep. You can't get
but
away from that.
it feels very different, and I feel like because of that, the interactions that I have with our customers is very different, and it's very rewarding from a job perspective. It's something I really really enjoy, and the ability to bring whatever knowledge that I have from my past experiences working in practices, and seeing, the interesting part about being a salesperson in dental is that you have the opportunity to be in so many different practices
Oh yeah.
and see so many different things, and how things are done
Yeah.
well and how things could be done better.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
when I was with Smile Sonica, traveling across across Canada, but also with Align in a number of special projects, being able to be in other practices in North America, you know, there's been hundreds of practices that I've had the opportunity to be in. So to have the conversations with dentists that are for looking for some insight, it's not that I've done what they do, but I've seen many, many of their peers and can speak to the things that I've seen that have been done very well. And
At the
so
practice level, and also from the manufacturer side of things, where we have access to all this science, and understanding the data, and being able to, like, personally too, I'll speak to that, like sitting at, like last week at the course with Dr. Shulk, and the amount that the amount of dentistry that I've learned, like TMJ courses, implant stuff, like it's pretty cool. Like I've and like this podcast too has been pretty fantastic for that. Just absorbing all this information. I think that's where you, Chris, like I think we can provide a lot of value on that front. Just the what we've seen, right? Like
Mhm.
where the clinician is, like, they're doing their work chairside. I think it's our duty to the service that we're providing is to help convey some of those things that we've seen, so that they're informed. There's so much activity going on across so many different fronts, from specialty to the GP level. It's an exciting time, really, across the board. I'm having a lot of fun, that's for sure. Um, what's your perspective on sort of the industry? Like, where do you see things going in the next 5 years with everything going on? Like, we're seeing this push to doing more at the GP level, doing more things chairside, in terms of milling and 3D printing. What are your perspective, like, what are you most excited about?
Yeah, I think that the direction that I see the industry going, with the AI components coming in and the ability to do more things in the practice in house if they choose, versus if you're sending things out to labs, et cetera, they're just going to continue to improve based on the technology that's coming, whether it's in office or dealing with partners that you deal with as a dentist. The efficiency of how things work and the speed at which the change is coming is super fast. And I think we're going to see a ton of new technology and opportunities, especially as AI continues to be better. And it's an interesting thing, the whole AI concept,
Yeah,
and how people either worry about it or they dive into it.
it's a tool.
And I
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the way I look at it. If you're in dental or you're a dentist and a practice owner, it's really taking control of educating yourself on how to utilize that particular tool to make your business more efficient, and give your patients a better experience at the end of the day. So that's really my thoughts on how things are going. It's going to continue to pick up speed in terms of how the technology is being implemented and released to the dental community. But it'll also be one of those things where, depending on your nature as a dentist, is figuring out what makes the most sense for your practice, and not diving into too much, because there's a lot of dentists that like the shiny new toys, and they buy, and they don't implement them as they should be implemented. So
Yeah.
I would say that that's kind of where the fine line is. Get the technology that's going to make sense as it comes out, but make sure that you're executing with it appropriately before you start to buy other things.
And
um,
buy the piece of equipment from the folks that will support you, I think, more than anything.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I think that's critical. That's critical. And partnering with companies that are going to support you in your practice growth and your goals, is always been a key component of my thoughts as an individual working for companies, is that wanting to partner with the customer to help them, and not just be transactional in nature and
Yeah.
selling a product.
100%. Yeah. We're moving away from the sales side of things and really consulting and finding, whether it's a patient or a doctor buying a piece of equipment or education, it's really, in, informing them and really gauging whether it's, you said it too. It's like, if it's a good fit for us and for them, right? I think at the end of the day, then nobody's walking through the door and has this bad taste in their mouth after the fact. So, um,
Yeah.
Chris, this has been awesome. Thanks for your time. Any thoughts? Anything going into thinking about before coming on here that you wanted to get across, or like inside the dental industry, or philosophy? Anything that's swirling around?
You're trying to go deep on me. I don't know if
I
I'm
always
that.
do. Yeah.
No, honestly, for me, really, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to jump on here. I know we've been trying to do this for a few months,
Yeah.
and I'm glad it finally worked out. But like you said, I'm super passionate about what I do. I think it comes from working with a great team that I work with right now under Dr. Schalk, who is hyper passionate and a visionary and sees a lot of things happening in the future for us as an organization. But really, if there's, for me, if there's doctors out there that are interested in expanding their orthodontic practice, uh, and focused on comprehensive orthodontic education, then I would say, take a look at Clearly Aligned, and we also have our Clearly Select group, which I think is a fit for anybody that fits that description that I just gave, and the amount of support that we give. And I think talking back to the educational components that we talked about in execution, the support is huge, right? Being able to have that support to be able to execute and have a community and a network behind you, to support you as well, I think is critical. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I think dentists miss out on, is that they're off on an island running their own practice and they just don't have that collegial connection
Yeah.
that someone like us would have had when working for companies and having, our colleagues that we connect with on a regular basis. As a practice owner, you're just out there,
Yeah.
by yourself running your business, and sure, you have your few connections, but having a network of like-minded dentists, I think, is a concept that makes a lot of sense for many dentists out there.
I think it's just good for their psyche too, right? Like I hear that echoed so much that they all, there's a lot that they feel that they're isolated and they're on their own, but there's not, right? There's these great communities of people out there and looking to support and be a part of what you're doing too. So, um, awesome, man. I look forward to seeing you at the next course or out there in the industry. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Appreciate being here.
Yeah,
It was a lot of fun.
we'll do this again.
Sounds good.
All right.